Dan Proft back with John Tillman, President, CEO of the Illinois Policy Institute. And John, big vote this week. This week, Wednesday, the Illinois House is going to take up the override that the Senate passed last week to override the governor's veto of legislation that would cut the governor out of negotiation with the state's largest public sector employee union. And if there's an impasse between the governor and the union that represents 60,000 state employees, then it goes to an arbitrator and they can cut Governor Rauner or future governors out of the process altogether. Why is this override vote so important?
It's important because AFSCME, which is the union you're talking about, 60,000 employees, wants something around an 11 or 14% salary increase when the state is going bankrupt. And so what this does, what Mike Madigan is saying, and what John Cullerton, the Senate president, is saying, is we want to be allies of AFSCME and the government workers at the expense of taxpayers. The governor represents the entire state, all the taxpayers, and they're going to carve him out of the negotiation, so it goes to arbitration. Arbitration always favors the sort of increasing spending. They always, you cut it in half. It always benefits the whoever's trying to raise the benefits. So this is a very important vote. It's in the House, and you should find out who your legislator is and let them know you want them to vote no to override the arbitration bill. It's essentially a declaration of war by the unions and Speaker Madigan and Senate President Cullerton on the taxpayers of Illinois. That's how consequential this is.
Now, I know there's a couple of Democrat legislators, Jack Franks up in McHenry County, Carol Sente in Lake County, Scott Drury over in Lake Forest. These are the self-styled independent Democrats that always vote with Mike Madigan, but run around saying they're independent Democrats. And there's some suggestion, well, maybe one or more of them will break, and they thus prevent the override. It doesn't seem to me that's particularly likely. When Madigan calls order, he gets order. That's the history. So assuming they are able to override, what is Rauner's next step? Do we get to a point where we have to seriously talk about PATCOing air traffic controllers in Reagan, Rauner using that model and starting to move towards substantial layoffs of state workers? Because how else do you make the numbers work?
Well, I think that's exactly right. You have to start looking at all of that. There's already a hiring freeze in place. I've long said that you should start to privatize every single aspect of government services. Privatize the Department of Motor Vehicles, privatize IDOT. This is already being done in local government. What's happening in local government, because all of this has become riper, the crisis, the financial crisis, the cost of labor, government labor, and pensions, all started much earlier because there's less revenue flexibility at the local level. So local governments have been doing public-private partnerships, competitive bidding, outsourcing. That is what I think Rauner will have to do should this get overridden. I'm not sure I agree with you, however. I think they've got a pretty good shot at pulling one or two Democrats over from what I hear. We shall see, as you know.
Yeah.
But I think it'll be a very good indicator of Governor Rauner's progress in whittling away at Madigan's power. So just so people know, there's 47 Republicans. If they all hold the line and sustain the veto, they need the one Democrat to get to 48, which prevents the override.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I'm willing to take action on that. That
right.
they override. I'm not celebrating it clearly,
No,
but I just know Madigan does a pretty good job lining up all the ducks when the ducks need to be lined up.
All of this, all politics comes down to this question. That's what we're going to find out about these Democrats you're talking about. Do you fear your voters more than you fear Speaker Madigan and his allies, in this case, the unions? And the point you're making, which is proven true till now, they always fear Speaker Madigan and care about him more than they care about their constituents who put them in office. What Rauner is trying to do is present that argument. Are you going to be with your voters, who voted for me, by the way, in over 20 districts, House districts? The voters put in Rauner while keeping the Democrat House member. And so the framing is, look, your voters voted with me, so you need to vote with me.
What if they don't override? Then what does Rauner do? When he's still in the game, then it's still in negotiation directly with the governor and the public sector union, AFSCME. So then what should he do?
I actually think what he will do, if that happens, is he will extend an olive branch and have some sort of conciliatory point to try to start to put pressure on Madigan, to have the unions actually give them a bone so that they will start to put pressure on Madigan to negotiate on the budget.
And we'll revisit the outcome of that on next week's installment of Illinois Rising. John Tillman, thanks so much for joining us.
Enjoyed it much.